this week, I just want to take a little bit of time, and I do mean a little bit of time. so, but I want to take a little bit of time, and I just want to ask a few questions, and I just want our hearts to start moving toward this idea. And the question I want to ask tonight is this: who is God, and what is He like? That's the number one question facing me and facing everyone in this room today. It's the question of who is God and what is He like. A.W. Tozer says that what comes in the book, The Knowledge of the Holy, I can't recommend this book enough. We have some in the source if you want to buy it. But he says what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. More than any other thing that defines us. What we think about God when someone mentions His name, does our heart move? That's the most important thing. That's the most important thing about us. Because that goes so much farther than just a head knowledge of who God is. It goes so much farther than just a few accurate thoughts that He's the God of the universe, or, He's all powerful, He's all this. When we really start wrestling with that question of who God is, it goes so much deeper than a head knowledge. It goes straight to the heart. And we have to ask ourselves that. That's something that we have to answer when we're laying on our beds at night by ourselves, when we're not around our Christian friends, when we're not in this environment of pursuit. When we're at home in our bed, we have to answer this question to ourselves: who is God and what is He like? Jesus put it like this in Matthew 16. He had just done some amazing things, and then He called His disciples to Himself, and He said, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, who do others say that I am? And, then they started telling them what everybody had been saying about Him. They said, well, some say that you're John the Baptist. Some say that you're Jeremiah. Some say Elijah. Some say you're just another prophet. And, He said, okay. But then He looked at them, and He asked them that same question. He said, who do you say that I am? Because that went so much farther. That went straight to the heart of what they thought about God. Who do you say that I am? And, they're staring at flesh and bones here, right? It's like if I stood up here and said, who do you say that I am? Jesus is standing in front of them in full flesh, and He says, who do you say that I am? And Peter says this. He says, you are the Christ. He said, you are the Christ. See, because God had revealed that to His heart. Even Jesus said, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you. The Father revealed this to you. There was an understanding in Peter of who God was, and it went so much farther than a head knowledge of who God is. And that's, I think, why, He said, who do others say that I am? And then He said, but wait, who do you say that I am? And they had to answer that for themselves. They didn't answer based on what others had told them. They answered that question from their own experience. And, as we start out on this pursuit, I just really want us to understand and to take a minute and just to consider who it is that we're pursuing and what it is that we're pursuing. Because, youthful zeal, somebody says pursue and we all take off running. We don't even know what we're pursuing. If someone says pursue, we just want to go. But I just want us tonight to just stop and just think for a moment. Just press our minds and go there. Who is God and what is He like? Who is He? Not what I say He is, not what Eric says He is, but who do you say that God is when no one's around? We must fight for this with all of our heart, for the knowledge of God, for the knowledge of who He is, for the understanding of the true God. Farther than what others have said about Jesus or God, we have to answer that question for ourselves. And and the Bible says in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, I'm going to read it. It says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against what? The knowledge of God. Why the knowledge of God? Why is it that Satan is so bent as we start out on this pursuit? The one thing that he would love to hold from us, I believe more than any other thing, is the knowledge of who God is. Just an understanding that He's so much bigger than what we could comprehend in our mind. He's so much bigger than what we could even fathom. If we pressed our minds and we went there and we tried to think of the loftiest thought of God, it's not even close. The knowledge of who God is goes farther than our minds. It goes straight into our heart. Only God can reveal that in our hearts and set us free from all these preconceived notions of who God is. these false ideas of who God is. This is what the knowledge of God will do. The knowledge of God in your heart will awaken your heart. The knowledge of God will awaken the human heart. You know, we just kind of go through life, you know, going to church. We go to church like we go to Tuesday basketball practice. It's just something we do. But then one day, the knowledge of God comes in, and all of a sudden, the grass is greener. All of a sudden, oh my God, you're God. You know, oh my gosh. You know, when we sing, how great is our God, for all of a sudden, it just takes on a different meaning. Something inside of me is bubbling as I'm singing this. I can't hold my hands down by my side anymore. The knowledge of God has entered into me, and I'm kind of catching a glimpse of who God is. And it's blowing my mind, and that's what God wants to do, I think. He wants to blow our mind, because what we want to do is take God and say, okay, God, I'm going to bring you down to about right here, because then I can understand you. Then I can control you, and then, you know, you can do whatever, you know, I want you to do. You can forgive me when I want to be forgiven and stuff like that. But God says, no, I want you to understand who I am completely. As you start out on this pursuit, I just want you to press your minds, and I want you to go there and try to understand it. Proverbs 2, he talks about search for wisdom as for silver and gold. He says, for then you will understand the fear of the Lord and the knowledge of God, and you will know the knowledge of God. See, the knowledge of God begins with a holy reverence of God. See, because I don't think there's a single person who's ever stood in God's presence and said, hey, God, I'm Jamie Phelps. How's it going? There is no way possible that we could even stand in the presence of God were it not for his grace. He is more powerful than we could ever imagine. He's beautiful. He's majestic. And, you know, I don't even fully understand this, but for some reason I believe it. I have faith that it's true about God. And he's telling me, he says, Jamie, you know, you might have an idea of who I am now, but I want you to go after the knowledge of who I am, because I want to reveal to you who it is that you're pursuing. I want to awaken your heart with just who I am. I love this statement. A guy at IHOP made this statement. It said, if you ever catch the knowledge of God, you'll be ruined for life. It's like, have you ever ate at a really, really, really good restaurant, and then like no other restaurants like McDonald's or anything just won't do anymore? You know what I mean? Big T-bone steak, 10 ounce T-bone, you know, real thick, just real juicy, real nice. Best hamburgers just don't work after that. You know, and as we get a glimpse of God, I know that's probably a terrible analogy, but as we get a glimpse of God, you know, church just won't cut it anymore. Religion just don't cut it anymore. Holy cow, God, you are the God of the universe. I just want to sit, you know, you are God in heaven, and here I am on earth, God. So I'm just going to you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let my words be few. I'm just going to sit here, because I want you to continue to reveal these things to me. And the more I speak, the more I hinder what you're doing. So God, just, you know, speak to me. Basically, I think we have too low of an idea of who God is as we start out on this pursuit. Because we've, you know, when I ask that question, who is God? Everyone in here, if we went around the room, everybody in here could, I'm sure, quote very accurate thoughts about who God is. But is it here and not here? That's my question tonight. Because God's pushing me, you know, Jamie, take it past what you think about me and begin to feel it. Begin to fall in love with who I am. So that when you answer that question, who is God and what is he like, it comes from your heart. It comes from a knowledge, not just from, you know, a few accurate thoughts. In Matthew 7, there's somebody who stands before Jesus. And he says, but Jesus, I did all of these things in your name. I did this, this, and this. You know, they had a resume. They had a great list of things that they'd done. Not just things, you know, Christian things, things for the kingdom. And Jesus, what did he say to him? He said, depart from me. I never knew you. There was no revelation of who I am on your inside. I heard somebody say that, you know, with a head knowledge of Jesus, when he comes to earth, we crucify him. Just like with the scribes and the Pharisees. See, because they knew the scriptures and they knew of the Christ. They knew him well, but they had no living understanding. There was no revelation in their heart. And what did they do? They crucified the Son of God. They crucified Christ.